White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki refused to explain why American workers are required to be vaccinated against corona but migrants coming across the southern border are not. Fox News White House correspondent Peter Doocy pressed Psaki on the administration's new vaccine mandate, which requires all businesses that employ over 100 people to ensure workers are vaccinated or test them weekly. Businesses that fail to comply will face fines of up to $13,600 per violation. Psaki said, "Our objective is to get as many people vaccinated across the country as humanly possible, and so the president's announcement yesterday was an effort to empower businesses, to give businesses the tools to protect their workforces. That's exactly what we did." The press secretary added that more people becoming vaccinated, whether they are migrants or whether they are workers, protects more people in the United States. Doocy asked, "It is a requirement for people at a business with more than 100 people. It is not a requirement for migrants at the southern border. Why?" And before moving on to the next question, Psaki responded, "That's correct. President Joe Biden's vaccine mandate also applies to all federal workers and contractors." The Los Angeles County School District implemented its own vaccine mandate in schools for all students over the age of 12. Joe Biden's sweeping new vaccine mandates contradict his 2020 campaign promise that he wouldn't make the shots mandatory. During an October town hall event in Philadelphia, Joe Biden rejected the idea of vaccine mandates when asked about it. Biden said of the vaccine, "You can't say everyone has to do this," adding that he would encourage state and local leaders to decide if mandates were necessary. He suggested handling vaccines the way the measles vaccine is handled. There is no federal measles vaccine mandate, but most states require a child to get the shot before they attend school. After the election, Joe Biden reiterated that he would not force Americans to get the shot. He said at a news conference in Wilmington, Delaware, "I don't think it should be mandatory. I wouldn't demand it to be mandatory. Just like I don't think masks have to be made mandatory nationwide. I'll do everything in my power as President of the United States to encourage people to do the right thing and when they do it, demonstrate that it matters." White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said Friday the virus landscape had changed since the president made those promises last year. She said, "We didn't anticipate that once the vaccine was readily, widely available and free to the public across the country that there would be such opposition to it, especially since it was approved under the former president, a Republican president." Ms. Psaki also told reporters twice this summer that a vaccine mandate was not the federal government's role. She said in July, "The government is not now, nor will we be supporting a system that requires Americans to carry a credential. There will be no federal vaccinations database and no federal mandate requiring everyone to obtain a single vaccination credential." Centers for Disease Control Director Rochelle Walensky also said there would be no federal mandate. On Thursday, Joe Biden announced a series of new vaccine mandates that would force roughly 100 million Americans to get the shot or risk losing their job. The new rules include a vaccine mandate for federal workers and a requirement that companies with more than 100 employees mandate workers get vaccines or get tested once a week. Companies that do not comply face a fine of $14,000 per violation. Joe Biden also announced vaccination requirements for all federal employees and contractors at schools on military bases, staffs of Head Start programs and other federal education programs. In the closing days of the recall effort that could remove Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom, his campaign has found a familiar foil that's as big as Texas. In fact, it is Texas. New Texas laws like restricting ways to vote are highlighted by Newsome and other Democrats as evidence of what a Republican governor could do in California should voters remove Newsome a year before his first term ends. Newsome also says his GOP opponents will follow the lead of Texas, Florida and some other Republican-led states by rolling back mask and vaccine requirements. He has framed the issue, a matter of life and death, for Californians. The last day to vote in the recall is Tuesday and Democrats are using stronger rhetoric to drive their voters to the polls. There are nearly 2 times as many registered Democrats as Republicans in the state, meaning a strong turnout should enhance Newsome's chances of surviving. If those polls are wrong and a majority choose to remove Newsome, It's almost certain a Republican would take the governorship since no Democrat with significant political standing is among the 46 replacement candidates. The leader in that field is talk radio host Larry Elder, a conservative Republican who is seeking to become the state's first black governor. California and Texas are the nation's two most populous states and political opposites. California and its nearly 40 million residents are governed by Democrats who champion progressive policies on healthcare, workers' rights and immigration. Texas, home to about 30 million people, is led by Republicans who have been on the forefront of conservative efforts on the same topics. Vice President Kamala Harris and Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren are among national Democrats who have reinforced Newsome's message that the California race is central to the fight over the nation's values. Leaders in California and Texas have a history of using each other's state as a political tool. In 2013, then Texas Governor Rick Perry cut a radio ad encouraging California businesses to decamp for Texas and its lower taxes and then followed it up with a recruiting trip to the state. Former California Governor Jerry Brown dismissed the effort as barely a fart. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has gloated about some businesses, including Oracle and Hewlett-Packard Enterprises, moving their headquarters from California to his state during the pandemic. California's population growth has slowed in the last decade and so the state lost a congressional seat for the first time while Texas kept growing fast and gained two. Two senior Democratic senators suggested several corporate tax increases on Friday to help pay for Joe Biden's massive $3.5 trillion expansion of the federal safety net. Senate Finance Committee Chairman Ron Wyden of Oregon introduced legislation with his Senate Banking Committee counterpart, Sherrod Brown of Ohio, to increase taxes on limited liability partnerships and penalize stock buybacks. The buyback proposal, authored by Mr. Brown, would impose a 2% tax on the amount that publicly traded companies spend annually on purchasing their own stock. Democrats have long railed against the practice, saying it is self-serving and only drives up the company's stock prices. Mr. Brown said, "Instead of spending billions buying back stocks and handing out CEO bonuses, it's past time Wall Street paid its fair share and reinvested more of that capital into the workers and communities who make those profits possible." In an effort to make stock buybacks even less attractive, the lawmakers proposing making the new levy non-deductible against corporate tax income. Essentially, that means that businesses would have no recourse or loophole to get out of paying the tax. Similarly, the bill would make it more difficult for corporate partnerships, including large law firms, to avoid paying taxes by divvying up income or profits among several individuals. Mr. Wyden, an Oregon Democrat, said, "This proposal simply reduces complexity by closing loopholes that allow those at the top to pick and choose when, and whether, to pay tax." The lawmakers say that the two changes could boost federal revenue by more than $270 billion over the next decade. Democrats want to use the new money to pay for Mr. Biden's massive social spending bill. Democrats are pitching the $3.5 trillion bill as human infrastructure to sell to voters. They suggest the bill complements the $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill, which focuses on roads, bridges and airport projects. In reality, the bigger bill amounts to a wish list of liberal priorities such as proposals for climate change, amnesty for illegal immigrants, tuition-free community college and expanded healthcare.